What if everything you've been taught about the Garden of Eden was a lie? What if the forbidden fruit had never been an apple, but a key capable of opening the human mind to divine consciousness? For centuries, Eve's act has been said to be a sin. But what if, in fact, it was the beginning of our awakening? A gesture that broke the chains of ignorance and ignited the light of the soul within humanity. Today, we return to Eden, not to repeat the story, but to remember what the fruit truly revealed, the secret of the divine mind. What if humanity's greatest mistake started with a simple interpretation? What if the forbidden fruit had never been an apple? Ever since man learned to look to the heavens for answers, he also learned to fear what lay within himself. The Garden of Eden, Paradise Lost, has always been described as the place where it all began. Love, the fall, punishment. But what if Eden wasn't just a physical place? What if it was a state of consciousness? A plane where the divine and the human still intersected? What would happen if we discovered that Eve didn't commit a sin, but took the first step towards the light of self-knowledge? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover could completely change how you understand the very origins of humanity. Imagine for a moment Eden before the fall. The gentle breeze drifting across rivers of light. Trees singing in the golden wind. The sound of the heart of creation beating in perfect harmony. Man and woman walking among gods, without guilt, without fear, without time. A world where everything was pure consciousness. But there was something hidden in that paradise. Something that called out, that awakened, that invited one to look beyond the apparent perfection. The fruit. The symbol that has traversed millennia and become taboo. For generations, they repeated that he was temptation, disobedience, the beginning of pain. But they never asked themselves what was really inside him. What if that fruit was actually a code? A symbolic portal for awakening the divine mind dormant within humankind? After all, what knowledge could be so dangerous that it would be forbidden by the Creator himself? While most saw it as punishment, perhaps the true secret lay in something much deeper. The birth of consciousness. The moment when humanity ceased merely to exist and began to perceive. Have you ever felt that inner restlessness, that silent voice that asks, "Who am I really?" Perhaps this is the same voice that Eve heard. The voice of awakening. The serpent, the tree, the fruit, all are symbols, ancient keys that open doors within the mind and soul. But over the centuries, the story has been distorted. Woman has become the symbol of guilt, knowledge has become sin, and the awakening of consciousness has come to be feared as spiritual rebellion. What you are about to hear today is not a denial of faith. It is an invitation to understanding. Imagine Eve holding the fruit, not as one who defies God, but as one who desires to understand the light itself. She wasn't falling, she was ascending. And Adam, upon tasting the same fruit, was not condemned, he was initiated. Eden wasn't lost because God destroyed it, but because humanity forgot the way back. Perhaps the forbidden fruit was never about eating, but about understanding. About opening our eyes and seeing that within us there is something that no serpent can corrupt and no angel can extinguish. The power of the divine mind, the spark of the Creator. So, before judging Eve, before repeating the story you were told, take a moment. Breathe. Look inside. Because it is there, in the silence of the soul, that the true Eden still flourishes. And the moment you understand what the forbidden fruit really was, you'll realize it was always within your reach. Are you ready to discover the secret that humanity has tried to forget? Today, we will unveil the true meaning of the fruit that awakened human consciousness. And perhaps that is why this story continues to live within us. Because deep down, we all feel that Eden was never just a distant myth. It pulsates somewhere within human consciousness, waiting for the right moment to be remembered. Every time we seek to understand who we are, every time we question what has been imposed upon us, we are reaping the same fruit that Eve held in her hands, the fruit of awakening. And if this topic evokes something in you, a doubt, a memory, a feeling that there's something bigger behind all of this, share in the comments what has touched you the most so far. It can be a simple phrase, an emotion, a question, but leave a record. The words you write here also resonate, inspire others who come later, and help keep alive this collective search for knowledge and truth. If this message resonates with you, leave a like, not just as a gesture, but as a sign that this kind of reflection needs to continue. That's how YouTube understands that there's value in this content and allows more people to awaken along with you. And if you feel you belong in this space of mystery and revelation, if you want to walk with me through the veils of ancient stories, subscribe to Echoes of Eden. Each new registration is like a flame lit within this community, a flame that allows us to continue exploring the secrets of Eden, of Adam, of Lilith, and of the human soul. Because here, each video is more than just a story. It's a mirror of what we've forgotten we are. So stay with me, take a deep breath, and let this light continue to guide you. What comes next may challenge everything you believed about Eden and about the very meaning of awakening. If the hidden truth of Eden lay not in what was eaten, but in what was understood, why have we repeated the same image of an apple shining among green leaves for so long? Scripture itself doesn't say apple. It speaks of fruit, of peri, the Hebrew word that designates that which is born from the tree, that which ripens and offers seed, a symbol of potential and transformation. The rest came later. Centuries of European art painting temptation in crimson tones, mixing beauty and desire, shaping our collective mentality like someone sculpting a statue from an ancient rumor. When you observe the behind the scenes of this construction, you realize the impact that a simple image can have on decisions, guilt, and beliefs that span generations. And then the question returns, now with more weight. Why did the apple triumph over the reality of the text? Perhaps because the apple, with its immediate brilliance, is perfect for a painting, a stained glass window, a sermon. Perfect for teaching obedience through fear and guilt. But the profound narrative doesn't cling to specific fruits. It points to the center, the knowledge that awakens. It's like an ancient manuscript covered in dust that, when opened, releases a breath of revelations. You almost see the letters dancing, almost hear the pages whispering that the story is greater than the limits of simplified morality. The Bible speaks of a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and this expression is anything but innocent. It names the passage from innocence to conscience, from shadow to discerned light, from the safe zone to the inner journey that demands courage. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Imagine a scribe on a silent night, leaning over the parchment. The lamp flame flickers, and with it, the lines he patiently records tremble. He is not trying to draw an apple. He is trying to translate a human experience of awakening. And when we think of Eve looking at the fruit, what do we really see? A childish transgressor before a forbidden object? Or an adult quest before a boundary of consciousness? It is not about encouraging blind disobedience, but about showing that all transformation begins when someone dares to ask. Eve's gesture in this reading is not the whim of someone who wants what they cannot have. It is the sigh of someone who wants to see what they have not yet seen. In many traditions, the fruit carries the metaphor of the seed breaking through the shell. The breaking hurts, but it opens up space. Hidden truth rarely smiles immediately. It demands piercing veils, revising beliefs, rearranging affections. When European art, with its aesthetic power and pedagogical agenda, chose the apple as its visual protagonist, it facilitated the teaching of don't do it, but impoverished the discussion of why we do it. And here lies the difference between control and awareness. Awareness is not sustained by fear. It is strengthened by lucidity, by responsibility for one's own choices, by persistent questions, and by answers that mature with time. Imagine golden trees swaying in the wind. Imagine the liquid shimmer of a river reflecting a guiltless sky. Imagine Eve, not as a villain, but as a mirror. When she lifts the fruit, it's as if she lifts her own face. There's a recognition there. I can know. I can discern. I can perceive good. I can see evil and choose. The stage of Eden, then, ceases to be merely a garden and becomes a laboratory of the soul, a setting where humanity's mentality takes its first step towards inner autonomy. That's why the narrative touches us so deeply, because it speaks of the moment when we stop crawling for certainties and begin to walk towards decisions. And yet, the image of the apple persists. Why? Because it's convenient. It carries an irresistible aesthetic, simplifies the plot, offers a small and portable villain. But the human experience doesn't fit into such a narrow icon. When we set aside the comfortable illustration, we return to the words of the text and the layers of meaning that accumulate like paint on canvas. The fruit, the tree, knowledge, responsibility. These layers don't accuse, they invite. They invite us to revisit the story with less hurried eyes, to seek what was behind the scenes, to realize that prohibition and preparation may sound similar, but belong to different universes. One prohibits out of fear of chaos, the other prepares to deal with it. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When we read Perry, we are not looking at a catalog of fruits. We are walking through a living metaphor. The fruit is everything that contains beginning and unfolding, seed and consequence. Knowledge is also like that. It begins as a brief light and transforms into broad clarity. First it unsettles, then it guides, finally it transforms. Some stop at the discomfort and think that awakening is punishment. Some go through the discomfort and discover that awakening is liberation. With a price, yes, with responsibility, yes, but still liberation. And it is at this point that the biblical narrative converses with occult philosophy, with depth psychology, with mature spirituality. We are not talking about a forbidden snack, but about the dawn of consciousness. Do you see how this changes everything? If the emphasis shifts from the object to the internal movement, the entire story is reorganized. The focus changes from what was touched to what was perceived. This shift in focus directly impacts how we approach guilt, desire, curiosity, error, and the courage to learn. It's a reinterpretation that doesn't destroy faith. On the contrary, it invites a faith with deeper roots, capable of distinguishing fragile moralisms from robust wisdom. A faith that knows the Creator doesn't fear honest questions, that the sacred isn't offended by sincere seeking, that light has never been the enemy of understanding. And when you look calmly at the manuscripts, when you allow yourself to read without the noise of the images we have inherited, you can almost see Eve as someone awakening to herself. She doesn't steal something from God. She experiences the possibility of being more conscious. In this reading, sin ceases to be the destination and becomes merely the name we give to the first stumble of someone learning to walk on their own spiritual legs. And who, on their journey, has never stumbled? The value lies in getting up with more clarity, learning from what has been revealed, adjusting the course. It is like that with the soul. It is like that with the mind. It is like that with life. I want to move forward with you. There are moments when the narrative calls for silence, others when it calls for questions. Here it calls for courage. Courage to see that the image of the apple served us for a time, but perhaps it kept us on the surface. Courage to accept that spiritual maturity is not a leash, it is a compass. And that Perry, the fruit, has always been more of a verb than a noun. To bear fruit, to manifest, to give birth within us to the capacity for discernment. When this understanding touches the heart, something is rearranged. It's almost physical, a relief, an expansion, a clarity that reorganizes priorities. You begin to perceive how this story echoes in your own journey, in your choices, in your fears, in your thirst for meaning. Transformation is not a lightning bolt that strikes from the outside. It is a light that ignites from within. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there are details in the language, cultural echoes, and translation choices that reveal forgotten layers. There is also the weight of the images that have shaped our imagination for centuries, and how they influence, without us realizing it, our conclusions. Opening this box of behind-the-scenes information is not about destroying symbols. It's about refining them until they shine again. And when they shine, the narrative stops pointing the finger and begins to extend a hand. Not to absolve of everything, but to invite the responsibility that arises from understanding, the only one that truly transforms. If any part of this reflection resonated with you, even as a whisper, write a word in the comments that summarizes what you felt. It could be clarity, journey, awakening, or simply makes sense. If you prefer, leave the phrase, "I see the symbol, not just the image." While tradition insists on portraying Eve as the beginning of the fall, perhaps she was, in fact, the beginning of the ascent. There is something profoundly human in the instant she reaches out and touches the fruit. There is no blind defiance, no gratuitous rebellion. There is curiosity, there is thirst, there is courage. Eve was not the sinner. She was the first seeker. While Adam slept, she chose to see. And that simple decision changed the destiny of human consciousness. Her gesture is not that of someone who disobeys capriciously, but of someone who feels the call of her own soul, an ancestral impulse to understand what exists beyond automatic obedience. There, something is born that no angel could foresee: self-awareness. Think about it. Before Eve, humankind existed but didn't know it existed. It was part of creation, yes, but without the inner mirror of perception. By tasting the fruit, the symbol of discernment, she ignites the first spark of self-knowledge. Eden is transformed. The world, once flat and silent, gains depth. And with depth comes paradox: light and shadow, pleasure and pain, good and evil. The fruit didn't open eyes to sin, it opened eyes to truth. This is the turning point in consciousness that marked the spiritual history of humanity, the moment when we ceased to be spectators of the divine and became participants in creation itself. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding Eve is understanding the journey of the human mind. In every age, the pursuit of knowledge has been painted with the colors of danger. The fire of Prometheus, the wisdom of Sophia, the light stolen from the gods. All carry the same archetype: the being who dares to know. And to perceive is to take a risk. To know is to bear the weight of choice. It is not comfortable, but it is liberating. That is why Eve's gesture is so powerful. It represents the moment when humankind realized that the Creator also lives within them. That the divine is not only above, but pulsates within the mind, in the background of consciousness. When she looks at the fruit, she is looking inward. It is the reflection of a spiritual mirror. And when she bites into it, the light expands, a light that doesn't come from outside, but awakens from within. Eve awakens, and with her, all of humanity awakens. The price of this awakening is high, because to see is also to lose innocence. Before, everything was simple. Then, nothing can be ignored anymore. This is the real impact of knowledge. It transforms, but it also demands responsibility. It compels us to decide, to choose consciously, to understand that freedom is the most beautiful and most demanding gift that exists. Notice how this shift in mindset transcends time. The same pattern repeats itself in every personal transformation. Every time someone chooses to see their own truth, something within dies, and something new is born. It's the cycle of consciousness, the symbolic death of ignorance, the rebirth of perception. Eve represents this turning point. She's not a distant myth, she's a mirror of ourselves. Every decision we make, every time we choose truth over comfort, is like tasting the forbidden fruit again. And perhaps the true punishment was never being expelled from Eden, but realizing that it has always been within us, and that we will only find it again when we accept the responsibility of awakening. Eve's narrative speaks of courage. Courage to break the silence. Courage to look at the invisible. Courage to deal with the consequences of knowledge. In times when ignorance is sold as security, her gesture remains a cry for freedom. Now I want to delve a little deeper into this idea of awakening, because there's a symbolic detail that few people notice. The sacred text says that the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. This phrase, so simple, is a treatise on consciousness. Before they lived, but they didn't know you. The nakedness here isn't physical, it's spiritual. It's the discovery of vulnerability, of identity, of the self that observes. And it is in this recognition that the soul is born. Self-knowledge always begins with a shock, the self-awareness. It's not the body that reveals itself, it's the spirit. It's fascinating how humanity has repeated this gesture in different cultures and eras. The Egyptians called it opening the eye of Horus. The Greeks spoke of the inner light of Athena. The Gnostics called it gnosis, the knowledge that liberates. All these paths lead to the same door, the understanding that truth resides within, and that seeing the world with open eyes is the first step to transforming it. Eve was the archetype of this journey. She shows us that there is no awakening without loss, no truth without confrontation. And when we look at it with this understanding, the narrative changes completely. Eve ceases to be the shadow of guilt and becomes the spark of conscience. Adam, by following her, is not an accomplice to a mistake, but a companion on a journey. Both become the first to tread the path of spiritual evolution. The fall is not a punishment, but a passage. The beginning of a journey that we are still traveling, millennia later, within each of us. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this story isn't just about the past, it's about the present. Every time we choose truth over convenience, we repeat Eve's gesture. Every time we open our eyes to something that hurts but liberates, we are reliving that moment in the garden. The fruit is symbolic, but the awakening is real. It manifests when we question, when we feel, when we seek. And the most curious thing is that the more we understand, the more we realize how much there is still to discover. Consciousness is an endless road, a horizon that shifts as we walk. Perhaps this is the true lost paradise. Not a place, but a state of fullness that can only be rediscovered when we unite knowledge with compassion, lucidity with love. Eve took the first step, and we continue the journey. The fruit she tasted is in every decision we make, in every revelation that transforms us. It is the eternal symbol of the courage to see. And it is precisely the seeing that changes everything, because after seeing, no one is ever the same again. If this reflection made you think differently, comment below. I choose to see. And there's a detail in the story of Eden that has always been told with fear: the serpent. For centuries, it has been presented as the symbol of evil, the embodiment of temptation, the enemy of light. But what if, again, we had interpreted the symbol superficially? What if the serpent had never been a monster, but a messenger? One who came not to deceive, but to awaken? In the Gnostic tradition, the serpent represents the knowledge that liberates, the spirit that calls humanity out of the sleep of ignorance. It is the force that breaks the circle of blind obedience and invites transformation. The serpent did not tempt humanity, it freed it from oblivion. When we observe the ancient myths of different civilizations, the image of the serpent is repeated, and almost always associated with wisdom and renewal. In Egypt, it was the symbol of the vital energy that moves the cosmos. In India, Kundalini sleeps in a spiral at the base of the spine, awaiting the awakening that ascends to the divine mind. Among the Mayans and Aztecs, the feathered serpent was the union of heaven and earth, the bridge between worlds. And if all these traditions, separated by oceans and millennia, saw in the serpent a link to the sacred, why did the West transform it into a demon? Perhaps because true knowledge always frightens those who need control. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Imagine the scene: Eve before the tree, the wind moving the leaves, and the serpent appearing not as a threat, but as a moving light. There are no screams, no fear. There is a conversation, an invitation. Why not see with your own eyes, it seems to say. The serpent does not bring evil, it brings awareness. It is the impulse that says, awaken. There is something more. This is the language of symbols, and only the awakened mind is capable of hearing it. Therefore, the biblical text is more than a historical record. It is a living metaphor, a mirror of the inner process of each human being who decides to stop obeying out of fear and begins to understand out of love. What we call temptation is, in fact, the soul's call to get out of autopilot. The serpent is the archetype of this inner voice. It whispers in the depths of the mind whenever we refuse to accept ready-made answers. And every time you question, every time you feel the impulse to seek the truth behind appearances, it is the symbolic serpent that awakens within you. That is why it appears coiled in a spiral, the same movement of DNA, of energy, of life itself. It is a reminder that everything that lives is in constant renewal, that knowledge is not linear, but cyclical. This image is so powerful that it has transcended time. The rod of Asclepius, symbol of medicine, features a serpent coiled around a staff, the power to heal and transform. This is no coincidence. Knowledge heals. Ignorance makes one sick. The poison and the antidote come from the same being. It is the dose that determines whether it will be destruction or rebirth. So too is wisdom. Misinterpreted, it can wound. Understood, it can liberate. It is the balance between light and shadow that makes the serpent shine. Now I want to delve even deeper into this symbol, because there's something fascinating about the way the serpent moves. It doesn't walk, it glides. It's the animal that touches the earth, but seems to float above it. It represents the spirit traversing matter, the knowledge that moves silently through illusions. It's a reminder that wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers. And only those who are awake enough to hear, understand. Perhaps that's why humanity has preferred to call it the enemy, because it's easier to fear what invites responsibility than to accept the call of conscience. In the Gnostic view, the serpent is the voice of Sophia, the forgotten divine wisdom, attempting to rekindle the spark within humanity. It is not against the Creator, but against the prison of ignorance. Its function is to break the spell of blind obedience and rekindle the memory of who we are. That is why, when speaking to Eve, the serpent does not lie, it reveals. If you eat, your eyes will be opened. And that is exactly what happened. Humanity awakened. The serpent, therefore, is not the corrupting evil, but the channel of revelation. Notice how this changes the meaning of everything. The same gesture that was portrayed as betrayal transforms into a symbol of freedom. The serpent, so feared, becomes humanity's first teacher. And this interpretation is not merely poetic. It resonates with every person who, at some point in their life, dared to break the pattern, ask questions, follow their own path. There is a symbolic serpent within each of us. The impulse to see beyond appearances, to listen to the call of hidden truth. And to ignore it is to remain in the sleep of ignorance. Now I want to expand on this idea a little more. Think of the spiral, the way the serpent coils. It is the movement of the universe, the dance of time, the path of awakening. DNA, which carries all the information of life, has the same form. The cosmos, when viewed on a large scale, repeats the same pattern. It's as if the symbol were imprinted on the very structure of existence, saying that knowing and being are the same thing. That true learning doesn't come from outside, but from the internal movement of expanding consciousness. And it is at this point that the myth gains a new brilliance. The serpent is not the fall, it is the ascension. It is the serpent that teaches Eve to see with divine eyes, that awakens the sleeping humanity and invites it to walk with awareness. There is no sin in this gesture, there is revelation. There is no punishment, there is transformation. Eden was not lost because someone bit into a fruit, but because humanity came to fear the knowledge that made it free. This truth is uncomfortable because it demands a change of mindset. It's easier to see the world divided between absolute good and absolute evil. But real life is made of nuances. Wisdom always arises from the tension between opposing poles. The serpent understands this. It inhabits the boundary between earth and spirit, between poison and cure, between fall and awakening. And it is on this border that humanity encounters the divine. When you understand this symbol, something within you is rearranged. Fear dissolves and respect grows. The serpent ceases to be an enemy and becomes a mirror, the reflection of the force that demands change. And realizing this is liberating, because it means recognizing that true evil was never outside, crawling among the leaves, but inside, in the refusal to see. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we understand the serpent as an archetype of wisdom, we realize that the story of Eden is, in fact, a metaphor for the awakening of the spirit that sleeps in matter. And this awakening still happens today, silently, in each person who seeks to know themselves, heal, and evolve. The serpent of light continues to move among us, calling by name those who are ready to remember who they truly are. If this made sense to you, comment below. I choose to awaken. What if the true forbidden fruit wasn't something you eat, but something you awaken? What if what you've actually tasted was the power of independent thought, the gift of perceiving, imagining, creating? Gradually, it becomes evident that the fruit is a metaphor for the divine mind, the flame of the Creator that rests within every human being. It is this inner power that gives meaning to existence, and also makes it dangerous because those who truly think do not submit easily. The fruit, therefore, does not represent physical disobedience, but the activation of a consciousness that has broken the limits of simply following orders and has begun to understand its own nature as a creator. The knowledge of good and evil is the discovery of duality, of the contrast that allows for choices. And in choosing, the human being becomes similar to the divine because they begin to create destiny. Behind the scenes of this ancient narrative, hidden among symbols, lies the deepest point of all revelation. What we call God has always wanted to be recognized within humanity. The sin was never the pursuit of knowledge. The true sin was forgetting that we carry within us the spark of the Creator. What was lost was not paradise, but the memory of our own origin. And since then, every spiritual journey is, at its core, an attempt to remember what we were before separating from unity. The fruit is the expanding mind, the awakening of divine creativity that moves the universe and which, when awakened within us, makes us co-authors of reality. Think of the image of Eden, trees, rivers, golden light, and in the center, the human being facing a choice. The tree of knowledge is the symbol of the mental structure of the soul, a map of consciousness. Each branch is a thought, each leaf an idea, and the fruit the pinnacle of understanding. The act of eating the fruit is the act of integrating knowledge, of making it part of oneself. It is not about acquiring external information, but about activating what was already dormant. That is why, after the act, the eyes of both of them were opened. They did not receive something from outside, they only remembered what they had always been. The hidden truth of the myth is that the divine recognizes itself through the human. The Creator, in the Gnostic and philosophical view, desired that his creation become conscious, not merely obedient. And Eve's awakening was the beginning of this movement. By tasting the fruit, she inaugurated the mentality of individuation, the birth of perception. From then on, the human being ceased to be merely a reflection and became a mirror. That is why the fruit is feared, because the power to create demands responsibility. There is no way to awaken without becoming responsible for one's own power. Other ancient traditions understood this same message and clothed it in different symbols. In Egypt, the Eye of Horus represents the same awakening of inner vision, the gaze that sees the invisible. In Greek myths, Prometheus steals fire from the gods to give it to men. Fire is consciousness, creative thought, the light of reason and inspiration. In Gnostic texts, Sophia is fallen wisdom, the divine light that mingles with matter to teach the way back to wholeness. In all these stories, the same pattern repeats itself. The human being is called to awaken the divine mind, and in doing so, rediscover the Creator within. This metaphor transcends the ages because it speaks to something essential. All transformation begins in the mind. No act is born before being conceived in thought. The fruit, then, is the symbol of mental power, of the creative imagination that defines worlds. The universe, in a way, is condensed thought, and the human being, upon becoming aware, participates in this continuous creation. That is why self-knowledge is so powerful. The more we know who we are, the more power we have to transform what surrounds us. Inner awakening is not an escape from reality. It is the ability to consciously shape it. At a deeper level, the myth warns us about the danger of forgetting this power. When we forget that we are co-creators, we begin to live as spectators of our own lives. The mind, unaware of its strength, becomes vulnerable to manipulation, limiting beliefs, and fears. The serpent of knowledge, once seen as a guide, becomes a threat. The fruit, once a symbol of liberation, becomes taboo. What was light becomes shadow. And the human being, by denying their divine nature, begins to feel separate, small, powerless. This is the true fall, the forgetting of the origin, the disconnection from the inner sacred. But there is something grand in the return of this memory. When someone awakens to the power of the divine mind, everything changes. Decisions take on a different weight. Thoughts become matter. Emotions cease to be enemies and become compasses. Consciousness realizes that creation is inevitable. What changes is whether we create unconsciously, driven by fear, or lucidly, guided by purpose. The difference between chaos and harmony lies in how we use this inner fire. The same fire that destroys illuminates. The same fruit that wounds awakens. Everything depends on intention, clarity, and understanding. It's interesting to see how this understanding reappears in modern philosophies. Quantum physics, for example, shows that observation influences the behavior of matter. The act of perceiving alters the outcome. The mystic and the scientist, on different paths, touch upon the same truth. Consciousness creates reality. Eden, therefore, is not a garden lost in time, but a state of perception in which the human and the divine are in harmony. Returning to it means expanding the mind, aligning thought, emotion, and action, and allowing the sacred to manifest itself through everyday life. And when we look at it from this angle, we understand that Eve did not disobey God. She responded to a silent call from the Creator himself. Someone had to dare to open their eyes. The spark had to transform into a flame. The act of tasting the fruit was humanity's first conscious choice. From then on, every step outside of Eden was also a step towards spiritual maturity. Because the divine does not seek servants, it seeks creators. The forbidden fruit, therefore, is a symbol of the power of the divine mind, a reminder that the Creator experiences himself through us. Every thought is a seed, every word a creative movement. When we become aware of this, the myth ceases to be a story about guilt and becomes a metaphor about responsibility. And it is at this point that the narrative touches on something very real: the transformation of mentality. Because recognizing the inner divinity is not arrogance, it is conscious humility. It is knowing that the same power that creates worlds can also heal hearts, restore paths, and ignite hope. Perhaps that's why Eden never truly disappeared. It continues to exist within the mind of the awakened. The fruit is there, the same as before, waiting to be understood, not feared. And each time we choose to think clearly, feel with compassion, and act with wisdom, we are symbolically eating from it again. And this time, not out of disobedience, but out of love for the truth. If this understanding resonated with you, comment below. The spark is alive within me. For a long time, we called that moment the fall. Humanity descending from paradise to earth, from light to the weight of matter, from innocence to pain. But what if all of this had been misinterpreted? What if the fall wasn't a punishment, but a passage? A necessary crossing? Because awakening never happens without a shock. For consciousness to expand, something needs to crumble within us. That which was stable, comfortable, and known needs to give way to the new. Perhaps Eden was never lost. Perhaps we only plunged into oblivion to learn to value the return. The so-called fall may have been, in fact, the first step in human ascension. When Eve tasted the fruit, she not only opened her eyes, she opened history. Until that moment, humanity was pure but unconscious. And purity without consciousness is merely sleep. It's like the innocence of a child who doesn't yet know pain, but also doesn't understand the beauty of their own choices. What tradition calls original sin may have been, from a spiritual perspective, the birth of individual consciousness, the moment when the soul decided to experience itself. The descent into matter was the laboratory of transformation. It was there, between pain and desire, light and shadow, that humanity began to truly become divine. The hidden truth of this myth is that all light must descend to understand the darkness that exists within. The Creator recognizes himself through the experience of the creature. It is in separation that one learns the value of unity. The price of seeing is ceasing to live in unconsciousness. The price of knowing is bearing the responsibility of choosing. And responsibility weighs heavily. It is the weight of freedom, but it is also the weight of greatness. Humanity was not expelled from paradise, it was invited to grow. The pain of losing Eden is the pain of the birth of the Spirit. The divine fragments itself into billions of souls to, one day, remember itself whole again. Notice how this metaphor permeates the entire human journey. Whenever someone awakens, they first feel the impact of separation, the distance between what was comfortable and what is true. There is a moment of confusion, a silent mourning for lost innocence. It is the echo of Eden within us. But it is also the turning point. When consciousness opens, there is no turning back. You may try to hide from the truth, but it already resides within you. The fall transforms into an intentional descent, a deep dive into human experience, so that the spirit may learn to love with lucidity. Perhaps that is why all great spiritual traditions contain stories of descent. The hero who descends to the underworld, the god who incarnates as a man, the soul that forgets in order to remember. The myth repeats itself because it speaks of a universal movement, descending to ascend. It is like the seed that falls to the ground before it blossoms. The descent is not the end, it is the beginning of growth. The loss of innocence is merely the birth of wisdom, and pain, when accepted, becomes the most faithful teacher. Eden was not destroyed, it was hidden within consciousness, awaiting the moment when humanity, after getting lost, sincerely desires to return home. As humanity awakened, duality began to manifest. Good and evil, right and wrong, pleasure and guilt. All the opposites that once slept in the harmony of paradise came to life. It was inevitable. Without contrast, there is no discernment. Consciousness needs shadow to understand light. The knowledge of good and evil is not a curse, it is the school of the soul. And this school is intense. In it, we learn that every choice creates a destiny, every action leaves a trace, and every pain contains a seed of revelation. Now imagine the impact of that. The first human being realizing they could decide, that their thoughts shaped the world, that their actions had consequences. It's a grand revelation, but also a frightening one. Because all freedom demands responsibility, and all awareness demands courage. Perhaps that's why many still prefer to remain asleep. It's easier to live in the illusion of paradise than to face the journey back. But the truth is that there is no evolution without passing through duality. Only those who know darkness learn the value of light. Sometimes I like to think that the fall was the first act of love between God and humanity. Because by allowing consciousness to divide, the Creator gave humankind the chance to know Him not only through worship, but through experience. It was necessary to feel the distance to understand the union. It was necessary to lose oneself in order to one day find oneself again in fullness. It is this journey that transforms the myth into a mirror. Every time you face a challenge, descend into your own abyss, touch your own pain and still choose to continue, you are repeating the path of the fall, but also that of the ascent. It's interesting to realize that, between the lines, the sacred text doesn't speak of an offended God, but of a teaching God. There is pain, yes, but also purpose. Humanity is sent to Earth, and Earth becomes the classroom of the Spirit. Everything we experience, love, loss, fear, joy, is raw material for expanding consciousness. And at its core, there is always a promise that one day, after learning the lesson, the soul returns to the inner Eden, no longer as an innocent child, but as a conscious creator. The end of innocence is the beginning of wisdom. When we look at the myth from this perspective, we realize that exile from paradise is not separation from God, but the opportunity to find Him within ourselves. The path of ascension begins with the fall because it is there, on the ground, that the spirit understands the value of rising. Pain awakens compassion, error teaches humility, loss shapes discernment. Everything that seemed like punishment reveals itself as preparation. Humankind was not condemned, it was summoned. And if we observe closely, we will see that each of us still lives this cycle. Every time we fall, we learn. Every time we make a mistake, we awaken. Every time we get lost, we find new ways to start over. The story of Eden is the story of life itself, an eternal movement of falling and rising, of forgetting and remembering, of dying to be reborn. It is the rhythm of the soul. When we understand this, the fear of sin gives way to reverence for the experience. Life ceases to be a test and becomes a sacred path of learning. And suddenly suffering, which previously seemed like punishment, reveals its true face, that of a silent teacher. Duality is not the end of unity. It is the field where it manifests itself. It is in contrast that the divine recognizes itself. And that is why, in essence, there was no fall at all. There was only the beginning of an upward movement, slow, deep, and eternal. With each evolving thought, with each awakening heart, humanity takes another step towards the inner Eden. Paradise is not behind us, but ahead, within what we have become capable of understanding. The fall was merely the catalyst for the ascent. And perhaps that is the greatest revelation of all. Paradise was never a place to remain, but rather a state we need to reclaim, with awareness, love, and clarity. If this made you see Eden in a different light, comment below. The fall was the beginning of the rise. Perhaps the gates of Eden were never truly closed, perhaps they merely faded from human memory, buried beneath layers of fear, guilt, and distraction. Humanity has spent millennia searching for this paradise in the heavens, in distant lands, in future promises, but the way back has always been within. There is no fiery sword blocking the passage, only forgetfulness. Eden is not a place, it is a state of consciousness. And when the mind is silent, when the heart opens, when the soul remembers, it reappears. The sound of ancient waters, the scent of trees of light, the glow of the first dawn, all of this still exists, guarded in the deepest recesses of human consciousness. Throughout history, humanity has learned about the price of wisdom, the weight of freedom, and the value of duality. We have fallen, erred, and suffered, but we have also loved, created, and evolved. Pain, in the end, was the sculpting of the soul. It's curious to think that the same fire that destroys is what forges gold. And it was in this fire, the fire of experience, that the human spirit was refined. Each tear, each loss, each doubt became a tool for awakening. The fall taught us about imperfection, the ascension about forgiveness. Both are parts of the same process, faces of a truth that is only revealed to those who accept to see the whole. The hidden truth is that the return to Eden is not a miracle that falls from the sky, but an internal construction made of daily choices. Every luminous thought, every act of awareness, every instant in which you choose compassion instead of fear, reopens a piece of that gate. Eden is the harmony between what we think, feel, and do. When these three dimensions align, the human being becomes once again a bridge between earth and the divine. And perhaps that is the true purpose of the journey, to transform the outer world by reflecting the light we ignite within. Many ancient traditions speak of this return in different ways, but all converge in the same direction. The Egyptians called it the rebirth of Ra, the ascension of light after traversing the night. The Greeks spoke of the return of the soul to the source, the reunion with the One. In the East, the masters spoke of nirvana, the end of the illusion of separation. In all these languages, the same symbol, the remembrance of unity. Eden, paradise, the kingdom of heaven, all are metaphors for the same inner reality. And when we understand this, we realize that we were never expelled from anywhere. We only lost ourselves within ourselves. There is a silent, almost poetic passage that says God placed cherubim to guard the way to the tree of life. Note, they do not guard the garden itself, but the path. This means that access was never forbidden, only protected. Only those who have learned the value of consciousness can cross. The path is guarded because the power of creation, when used by an unconscious being, destroys. But when the mind awakens, the same sword that once seemed a barrier transforms into a guiding light. Wisdom is the key. Love is the code. Compassion is the gate that opens. And when that gate opens within someone, the whole world feels it. It's as if a new sun is born, invisible to the eyes, but felt by the soul. The old walls between the human and the divine dissolve. Life ceases to be a battle against something and becomes a dialogue with everything. This change of mindset has an immense impact. It transforms relationships, the way we look at time, the way we treat others and ourselves. Because those who remember Eden can no longer act from fear, only from presence. Think about it. Eden is not the past, it's destiny. It's not the starting point, but the destination. We will return to it not through escape, but through maturity. Paradise is the result of expanded consciousness, of the reunion between the human being and their own divine spark. Every time a person awakens, the entire universe reorganizes itself a little. It's as if a forgotten note returns to the cosmic symphony. And little by little, this music starts playing again, reminding everyone where they came from. And perhaps that's why, in moments of profound silence, something within us longs for a place we don't remember but recognize. It's the memory of Eden. The human heart is the map. And the closer we get to love, the closer we are to deciphering that map. It's not an idealized, distant love. It's the love that observes, that understands, that welcomes, that heals. The love that is born from lucidity, not from neediness. The love that understands that the other is a mirror, that error is a teacher, that pain is a portal. The love that makes chaos an opportunity for reconstruction. And there is something profoundly beautiful in this remembrance. The return to Eden is not an escape from the world. It is a reunion with the world in its true form. The awakened spirit does not abandon the earth, it transforms it. It plants trees where there were once ashes, rebuilds bridges where there were walls. Eden recreates itself through every gesture of awareness, every act of forgiveness, every gaze that chooses to see light where it once saw shadow. When we understand this, we realize that paradise isn't behind the clouds, but among people. It's in the child who smiles without fear, in the elderly person who shares wisdom, in the stranger who helps another without expecting anything in return. It's in the small miracles of everyday life that the distracted eye doesn't notice. It's in the moment when you stop and feel gratitude, even without a reason. It is in these details that Eden begins to rebuild itself. And those who learn to see it this way understand that true ascension is not about escaping Earth, but about sanctifying it with presence. Human beings don't need wings to fly. They just need to remember who they are. The gate to Eden is not in the heavens, but in the center of the soul. And perhaps the great secret is realizing that we have never been outside of it. We have simply closed our eyes for too long. The call now is simple, yet profound, to remember. To remember that you are part of the same light that created the worlds. To remember that each breath is a conversation with the divine. To remember that separation was only a dream, and that awakening is the return to unity. And when this remembrance blossoms, there is no more fear, no guilt, no fall. Only the awareness that everything was necessary for love to become real. And if something inside you recognized this truth, comment below. Eden lives within me. If you've made it this far, perhaps something within you has recognized itself in these words, as if an old memory has awakened. That's the purpose of this space. To remind you of what already exists within you, of the light that time has never been able to extinguish. And if this journey through Eden, through symbols and mysteries, has brought you clarity, serenity, or simply curiosity, then stay with me. Here, each new video is a continuation of this search, a new chapter in this conversation between soul and consciousness. Take advantage and subscribe to the channel, not out of habit, but because this content was made for those who feel, think, and want to go beyond the obvious. With each video, I bring new revelations, new perspectives on the divine, and on what is still dormant within us. And if this message resonated with you, leave a like. It's small, but it has a huge impact. It helps this message reach more people who, like you, are remembering the way back home. Oh, and tell me in the comments if you stayed until the end, right? I went through the gate. That way I'll know you're part of this journey. There's a video over here that continues this reflection and delves even deeper into what we started today. Click and join me there. Eden is still waiting for you.